Thank you. Hey, everybody. Sorry for the little logistics there. I'm Omar Malani. I run the internet practice at Bank of America for our investment banking team. David, you introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. David Geisen from Mercado Libre, in charge of our Hispanic marketplaces in LatAm.
So I think the conversation we're about to have is kind of wide, very wide, and it runs a gamut of things. We think we want to focus on Mercado Libre, the e-commerce and kind of marketplace market in Latin America, and then some of the recent travails and kind of the effects that's had on that market. So maybe just the best place to start is, maybe not everybody's familiar, maybe a lot of people are. What is Mercado Libre? What are you guys focused on? What have you built over the course of the last 15 years?
Yeah, so Mercado Libre started 25 years ago as a marketplace similar to what you may know or see from eBay. So buying, selling products, but not being a transactional marketplace in the sense that the user could actually pay the product on the platform. And all this changed about a decade ago, where Mercado Libre became transactional and took control of the experience of the user. So providing shipping information, and then over the past 6-7 years or so, we invested heavily into fulfillment solutions, warehouse operations, transport solutions to handle basically everything on the logistics part, and fulfilling millions of packages every day with our logistics capability in the region, and also developed a very strong fintech business along the way. And first driven by the necessity to process our own payment transactions in the region, and then later on enabling other companies to use this solution to charge both online and also in the physical world, and also have a big credit business related to the fintech arm, because you may know many people in the Latin American region don't have access to credit, and that's something we are changing with Mercado Pago. Both we have a buy now pay later solution, as well as credit card solution and service payments solution, etc. So just to throw out some numbers there, last year processed some $200 billion in payments volume in Latin America, and sold about $50 billion in product value, almost 2 billion products sold in the last 12 months of Mercado Libre.
Amazing. So a huge scale. Let's talk just a little more generally about the e-commerce market in Latin America. How's it faring? What, if any, impact has the recent kind of geopolitical stuff had, and how does it impact Mercado Libre's business?
So the e-commerce penetration in the region in Latin America is roughly 12% of the total retail sales, but you have very different, let's say, e-commerce penetrations across the country. So if you look at Argentina and Brazil, it's roughly 12% of retail being sold online. But if you look at Chile and Colombia, it's only 8-9% of retail, while Mexico, as we got before, accelerated strongly in the recent years, when going from single digit to 16% of retail being online, heading for the 20%. So very similar to the e-commerce penetration here in the US, but growing at a faster pace. Exactly. So the e-commerce growth last year was roughly 20% for the total market, and we were growing consistently above the market growth rates, so capturing share. And still there's a lot of end in sight, I would say, because I see more similarities between, let's say, Asian countries and Latin America than I see to US or to Europe, mainly because of the way lower physical retail penetration you see in Latin America and in Asia versus Europe and the US. We have way more square foot per capita of traditional retail space available, and the proximity a person has on average to a store is far greater here than it is in Latin America. So the conclusion is basically e-commerce as a channel adds a lot more value to the end user in emerging markets than it does in, let's say, the US or Europe, where you have such a high fiscal retail penetration. And at the same time, we see a big opportunity in enabling users to get access to digital payment methods and means of transacting, which was not the case a couple of years ago. So that's where we started a credit business and extending consumer loans. Just in Mexico alone, we have more than 15 million credit lines open to our users that they can use without even having a credit card available to them.
So, I mean, I would think about that in terms of like a digital native consumer, or at least a digitally conversant consumer. So when you think about that, that's like intra-country, right? A Mexican merchant selling to a Mexican consumer. But what about cross-border? If I'm a merchant outside of Mexico or outside of Colombia trying to sell into those two countries, what's the state of that and what's the growth there?
The growth rates are similar. If you look at it on a, let's say, aggregated level, it's double digits growth rates, and depending, if you look at different markets, between 20 and 50% growth rate. So it's significant growth, but it strongly varies by category, right? So the categories that drive higher growth are usually of the cross-border segment, are usually where the brand of the product is important. So electronics, fashion products, also personal care, wellness products, I would say. And then where it becomes less value driven and more volume driven is on, let's say, cheaper products, where also cross-border is thriving. So I would say it's, on the one hand, the longer tail and more durable products that are branded. On the other spectrum, you see lower price, simpler, easier to use and to forget about products that are not very durable. But there are many different players active in the market, and we are focusing our business, especially with sellers and brands from the US, more on the value segment to complement the catalog and the brand assortment available to users that search more for those type of products too.
Interesting. Let's get to the administration. Let's put it that way. So there's been obviously a lot of noise, and earlier this week we had what I do. The markets have done very well as a result of the potentially lowering tensions with China. But what is the impact of all of this and all of that, what the Trump administration is doing to U.S. merchants who potentially want to sell into Latin America?
Interesting question. And I would say it depends on what markets you're looking at. So between the US, Canada, and Mexico, we have a trade agreement. So it's very competitive or attractive for US-based brands and sellers to sell into Mexico because of the tax benefits of $150 and then $117, where you pay nothing or only very reduced taxes. That's one market. And then if you look at markets like Argentina, it has been completely locked, I would say, for cross-border transactions until November last year. And then December, we had the big change. And now it went from being the least attractive market to one of the most attractive markets in the region, because you have a de minimis of $400 per package per user, a couple of times, 4 times a year. So it becomes way more attractive for Argentinian e-commerce buyers to buy abroad. And what are the implications for companies here? I would say it makes it more attractive to look outside of only the domestic market to establish a trade relationship on the one hand side, and then on the other hand, maybe also considering to start in the larger markets, local operations, and instead of bringing all products from the country of manufacturing into the US, that from there ship it, maybe also considering to go from the manufacturing country direct into the target market, which of course is a way bigger step, but depending on the type of product and the country in question, would make sense to consider for some of the sellers or brands as well, I would say.
When you think about the Latin America market, and I don't love these two words because sometimes just the American view the Latin American market into these two prisms, which I don't think is appropriate. But if you think about recession or inflation, what do you think about the Latin market as a whole going forward? And then it's obviously idiosyncratic. What happens in Argentina is very different than what happens in Chile.
Exactly. Yeah, so as you pointed out, the market dynamics per se are very different across the countries. We operate in 18 countries in Latin America, and you have different, let's say, governments, philosophies. In all of those countries, for example, in the first half of last year, Argentina was passing a very tough time on a macroeconomic level, and we had declining sales there because it was a system shock, floating the currency, etc., which now has stabilized and just past the last quarter. We saw 52% growth in units in Argentina, which is one of our most mature markets in the whole region, and seeing 50+% growth really for us is a signal. Okay, we are back to growth and back on a recovery path. There, for example, you may have other countries with slower growth, but still the main markets for us in the region of Brazil and Mexico. Brazil is roughly 50% of total volume that we do in the region. Mexico about a quarter, and both markets are growing first quarter with 25% year-over-year unit basis, right? So unit basis is basically number of products being sold in the market. In value terms, you have to factor in, okay, how much is the FX change versus the US dollar, because we report in US dollar all our numbers. Revenue for us past quarter grew 37%. So in value terms, in FX neutral terms, it's higher growth even than the unit-based growth. I like the unit-based view because for me it's, let's say, the true indicator of the activity that's going on economically in the country, irrespective of how the currency volatility has been over the year.
So David said, what was the percentage range for both countries?
So 25% in number of products being sold for the first quarter in Brazil and in Mexico, 52% in Argentina, and Mercado Libre as a whole was 28% growth year-over-year in the first quarter. So we continue on a growth trajectory in all markets.
I think that's really interesting because I cover many marketplace businesses globally, and that's by far the highest growth other than maybe Kaspi, which is a Eastern European business, which is mostly a fintech. When I first started covering Mercado Libre more than a decade ago, it was a sub $5 billion market cap business, US dollar market caps, trades to the US. Now it's a almost $130 billion business. What's facilitated that? Other than like Marcos's great leadership and all that, what's actually facilitated?
Very good question. I would say it's multiple factors, but on the one hand side, definitely the strategic decision to invest into fulfillment network, i.e. warehouses, then to develop all the technology of doing so, operating the warehouses and the full logistics supply chain from first mile, middle mile, last mile to delivery with our own technology. Very, very strategic and big step for Mercado Libre, which really helped us to control the user experience. And the second one, I would say, is a deep integration with our fintech solutions. So becoming really a local payments expert, processing the payments and for issuing credit. Just talking about Mexico, for example, starting in December, Mercado Libre has become the #1 financial app in terms of downloads in Mexico, ahead of any other financial institution in the country. So this helps us to give users access to digital means of payments, credits, etc., integrated deeply with our marketplace offering and platform, where we have invested in the logistics and the experience heavily, and also in brand protection programs, onboarding lots of brands. So I started about 6 years ago at Mercado Libre, and back then we had, let's say, more of a Wild West situation in terms of the assortment and brands operating on the platform, which now is very controlled, and we have way more brands, hundreds of international brands also operating on the platform. And actually we became the main retailer of the country, full stop. So not just online, but so in Mexico, there's no other retailer selling more general merchandise than Mercado Libre. So that's basically the end result of focusing on executing what is better service levels by controlling the technology. So we have almost 18,000 developers developing all the solutions by ourselves. So we have control, we can measure, we generate a lot of first-party data directly, which we then use to take better decisions and improve the service levels. And basically the combination of this with fintech, I would say, for us was the main differentiator that really enabled us to grow sustain above market and really make this a big business.
So for this audience, some of that is probably self-evident, but if you're an international brand or a merchant outside of Latin America, what you've learned and built in Mercado Libre, why would that be appealing for that international brand to start selling into Latin America?
Yeah, so first of all, I would say Latin America is a relevant and becoming a more relevant market, a higher growth market. So it's more than 600 million people living in Latin America. So it's 2 US in terms of population you have there, but still not very accustomed to buying online, but with high growth rates. Just Mercado Libre last year had north of 100 million different customers transacting on the platform, about 67 million during a quarter, and a lot of traffic. So just to basically look at the numbers top of mind, every day we have around 22, 23 million sessions in the mobile app. So it becomes the primary source of exploration for the e-commerce, online users in those respective countries. The product exploration search starts in our application, right? So they don't go to a big search engine that you all may know, but they go to the second one that you may not know, it's Mercado Libre, the second largest search engine in Latin America. And I would say that's one big argument of considering us as a platform or Mercado Libre as a region, because you have a large pool of potential customers there that are already searching for the brands, for the type of product that is on offer. And you have different ways of accessing those customers, right? So you may choose to offer the products and have the inventory here in the US or in a different country, but let's assume the inventory is here in the US, in your warehouse. Okay, you can use Knock, for example, and then publish the products on our platform, generate sales, and see, okay, what markets are the most interesting ones for you. So that's one solution. Different solution can be you ship your products to our fulfillment facility. We have a warehouse to Texas, and everything is in US dollars, it's in English, so it's very easy and convenient to get going. And the stock that we have in the fulfillment center in Texas is being offered in Mexico and in Argentina for the time being, but there will be more markets down the road. And coming back to the opportunity in Argentina, there we see triple-digit growth to Argentina from the US facility, from our US warehouse to Argentina, basically because right now we're still lacking, let's say, a lot of international product offering into the Argentinian market. So it's a day one or zero moment for us where we have to enable more and more products and brands into the Argentinian market because products on an international, from an international selling are way cheaper compared to the lower prices in the market because of the recent changes that.
So there's just pure if I'm a U.S. seller and I go to Knock Knock to help me enable selling on Mercado Libre's marketplace, I have just innate demand because what I'm selling is going to be cheaper than the local product.
If we're talking about Argentina, yes. If we're talking about Mexico, the price level is way more competitive on those type of products that would be shipped from the US. But still there, I would say the use case is more for, okay, how do we extend the assortment, go for long tail, go for brands that may not be present in the market. So how do we complement the offering? And in Argentina, it's besides the complementing part, also the one on price. Very simple. For products that may already be available in the market.
We've seen the Chinese large brands and sellers make a significant move into Latin America. We saw very recently news with even ride sharing and food delivery and all these folks, and they're going to spend money in Latin America. What do you think the construct is going forward with U.S. brands trying to move into Latin America, competing against Chinese brand? Is there enough palette in the Latin America market?
I would say there is. So I definitely see a world where both U.S. sellers and brands are growing in Latin America, plus Asian marketplaces and sellers are doing the same, and the local ones. It's just the situation of changing demographics in Latin America. We have more and more middle class and people with access to purchasing power and means of financing that they did not have in the past. And at the same time, a more and more improving service levels of buying online, right? So buying online 10 years ago in the region was very different, and no fast shipment or not even shipping really being controlled. To talk about payments and financing of those payments. Today, I come to Europe whenever I visit the US, I'm wondering, like, why is everything so slow with regards to e-commerce? I mean, it takes days. In Mexico, we have same-day delivery from our fulfillment centers in 26 cities. Okay, here it's like, okay, do you want to have it in 1 week or 1 week and a half or 3 days, 4 days? I mean, of course, I'm exaggerating, but it's not standard anymore to assume that everything is faster in let's say, outside of Latin America. That's something for us very new, and also for the users, which helps a lot to drive the adoption, right? Because the experience is very appealing, very good service levels, fast, convenient, financed, integrated, and trustworthy, which was one of the main challenges in the past as well, because users could not really be sure, okay, what to expect in terms of product and service level. Right now, Mercado Libre, 99+% of items are new, with guarantee from official stores, sellers, and delivered within 24 or same day and 2 days maximum to the user. So the experience really improved by a lot. It came from a very low starting point, let's say 10 years ago. But the incremental improvement has been a lot faster, more significant, I would say, than in many other established products.
Do we have any questions from the audience? I want to monopolize. While we take it a bunch of, you mentioned long tail versus top selling, for lack of a better term, products. In the U.S., we have a market for all of it, quite candidly. What's the market for the long tail in Latin America?
I would say the opportunity for the long tail market in Latin America is huge, just because way less brands are directly operating in the respective countries, right? So if you take a market like the US, you have all the, let's say, head selection, mid and long tail products and brands operating directly in the market and being available in the market, either through a marketplace or a direct to consumer operation, but they are in the market. In Latin America, you have a sub-selection of those brands and some local brands, like you have more local manufacturing in Argentina or Brazil than you have in maybe Chile. So it differs by market, but in general terms, there's less brand and less SKU variety in Latin America. And the smaller the country is, the less brands and SKU variety is available, and the more value add is there for the brands to offer their products in those markets. So I would say there's a big opportunity for the long tail, and for head selection and faster returning products. I also do see an opportunity, and there what we've seen working better is those items being placed in one of our fulfillment centers, either here in the US or directly in the market itself, because the let's say the conversion driver for those items is more the convenience, the delivery time, i.e. do I get it in 1, 2, 3 days, the products, versus 2 or 3 weeks, I don't want to wait, and it's a fast moving item, so most likely it's already available in the market, so you need to be fast in order to convert. While in the longer tail, chances are higher that the product is not even available in any other channel or let's say retailer in the market, so offering it by itself is a huge value add, and most likely you can generate more margins but with lower unit sales, right?
All the way up there. Really interesting talk about Patterson. Talked a lot about Mercado Libre becoming a financial institution of the last few years. What advice do you give to businesses regarding to world screening, chargebacks? I mean, obviously becoming a revolving credit operator involved and help to mitigate that. But what advice can you give to US businesses helping to penetrate the market?
I would say my advice would be to expect a lot of creativity on the user level. So any possible way of playing the system, of trying to find a loophole, yes, they will find it and they will exploit it. So that's one recommendation or hit I would have. And then, of course, try to work with players that have experience processing payments in the respective market, and also enabling transactions with almost any payment method available in the market. So not only credit cards transactions, but also all debit cards. There are many, let's say, voucher cards when people get the top up every month for certain kind of expenses. And also you have ticket sales, not ticket like going to a concert, but you get a barcode, you go to a convenience store and you do a cash payment linked to the barcode, and then the payment gets released and the product shipped, etc. So offline and cash payments and also a significant part of transactions. So this I would say is very important as well. And yeah, the more data you have available, the better I would say your fraud prevention can work. So in our case, we benefit from having the user data from his navigation, from his device, his transaction history, and also link this to thousands of other businesses that process payments with our solution as well. So we get more of a market insight on the user in question. And we also get, let's say, insights on, okay, what zones or what addresses in the country are more prone to fraud, because we have seen that shipments to those addresses, either from us or from other merchants processed by us, are resulting later on in a chargeback. So we can be, let's say, more precise on the risk scoring. So more data you can get in for your scoring, I would say the better. and try to cover all the payment methods, especially cash and offline payment methods. Just to throw the number there, in Mexico, still 85% of retail transactions are cash, non-card payments, and the value, I believe it's something like 59% of the value being processed is in cash. It's going down, but still, it's very significant in absolute terms.
Any other questions from the audience? Cecilia, are we okay? Maybe just one more for me is just a question around high value, high price products versus kind of lower price products. If I'm an American seller, is there one of those windows that I want to be in, or are Latin American consumers today agnostic?
You mean during the year, or?
I just think let's do a hypothetical. I'm an American seller. I want to enter the Latin American market. I have multiple kind of ranges of products I could sell. What would you recommend they sell first, or just take the whole inventory and sell it in the Latin America?
Yeah, I would say go for everything and then try and error basically. But what do we see in the numbers? So the numbers, what I do see is that the average selling price of products being shipped from the US into Latin America is about triple in average selling price versus what gets shipped from, let's say, China to Latin America. So that implies for me, okay, there is more of an edge on mid to higher priced, branded, durable products where the quality is more important than maybe just getting a simple, cheap product to the user, because most of those cheaper items are not manufactured here, but in Indonesia, Thailand, China, etc. And the edge becomes, relatively speaking, lower because there are many of those manufacturers are also going directly on the marketplaces into the market. So my gut feeling is test and trial for your category, but generally speaking, when trying to find a pattern, I would say it's more the mid to higher price products that are durable, and what user has a quality aspect in mind, recognizes the brand, and it's more of a aspirational, let's say, motivation for the user to transact, rather than a purely price-driven one. Price, of course, is important. Service level is important, but if the product, in many cases, the brand and the product is not available in the country, full stop. You cannot get your hands on. So making it available is one very important aspect for conversion. And then the more you go to mainstream products and items, more shipping speed and price are the drivers really. Perfect.
Any other questions for the audience?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Fernando Telesco. And it's related to the average order value. Like, what's the breakdown? And I've been in e-commerce for that for 12 years. There used to be a high concentration of consumer electronics, and that's high average order value. How has that changed, especially in the last 5 years? Fashion, products, sports. Because I know there's sellers selling, for example, consumer products or supplements. What's the breakdown in X, for example, or in Brazil, in terms of categories?
Well, okay, a lot of things to unpack there. So if we look at the average selling price of the products, of the average product over time, it's roughly stable over the past 3, 4, 5 years. So no big change there, but it's a very strong effect of mix. So nowadays we sell a lot more consumer packaged goods and fashion items that may have a lower average selling price, but at the same time we are also moving upwards with regards to brands and higher value consumer electronics products, for example, or home furnishing, etc. So you have those two mix effects that work basically against each other, right? So you're more into selling more units of cheaper products at the same time that we're going up the market, and those effects are almost perfectly compensating each other out with regards to average selling price. What we do see an increase in markets where we operate fulfillment, like warehouses, is that the number of items per order is increasing because it becomes more easy to, let's say, put a cell phone with your shampoo in the same order because we have it at the same fulfillment center, so we put it in the same box. While in the past, almost everything was drop shipped. So the shampoo seller ships the shampoo, the cell phone seller ships the cell phone, and 2 packages arrive. So now we can consolidate a lot better, which helps to drive up the average order value and also the average value traveling in each box, right? So I will say those are the effects working against each other, maintaining the average selling price rather stable. And we're investing, let's say, both in being able to transact higher value items. So our fulfillment capabilities are increasing, so we can process heavier products, larger products from our fulfillment and in our transportation network. At the same time that we are growing our CPG, our beauty, our accessible priced fashion products as well. So this all, I would say, is rather netting each other out in terms of category growth. And what you mentioned, like the heavy reliance on consumer electronics. Yes, the less mature a market is in Latin America, the more you see consumer electronics being dominating in terms of mix. So if you go to a small country, you may see 50, 60, 70% of the total volume being consumer electronics. If you go to a more developed country like Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, the mix of electronics is way lower. It's still the largest category, but it's nowhere near 50%, way less. So still double digit, still a large category, but not dominating. So usually it's the largest category is consumer electronics with all its different subcategories, then fashion, and then home decoration and appliances. And also what's surprising to many is the car parts and car accessories business, which is very, very large. I would say most of the car, let's say repair shops, etc., source their parts from Mercado Libre because you have the full variety very fast, accessible to you, which helps you to turn around the cars, the scooters or whatever vehicle you have faster, right? So you have less time standing in your garage and you can chill more repaired cars or vehicles, right? So that's a category that has been very surprising for me because I would not have expected to be that.
Yeah, I don't. It's funny. I don't find that surprising at all because the number one category for eBay for the last 16 years has been auto parts.
Okay.
So I think it's just a maturation of markets. You know, the more. I think maybe to wrap this up, I think David does a great job of just explaining the tailwinds, both of Mercado Libre and obviously the tailwinds that help Knock's business. But I think it's very obvious for me from an onlooker, I'm certainly not Latin America, but I've spent a little bit of time covering Mercado Libre and companies in Latin America for the last few years and globally, is that if people thought 15 years ago was the time to invest in Latin America, I would tell you that the next 15 years is just as good. And I think, obviously, Knock's building a great business. Mercado Libre is a $130 billion business, so nobody needs to tell you that's a great business. But I think it's a massive amount of opportunity in Latin America. But with that, David, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much.